Hello there. Good evening. Welcome. This is Syracuse Basketball Postgame, presented by Krause Health. We are live on the Syracuse Basketball Orange Facebook page. We're live on Twitter. Hello, friends on Brent Axe Media on Twitter. We're also live on Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube, and we're coming off the heels of a 64-53 loss by Syracuse to the Pittsburgh Panthers. And yeah, that happened, folks. Syracuse falls to 9-11 on the season. 3-6 in the ACC. They are now 2 games under 500. This has never happened in the 46-year tenure of Jim Boeheim as head coach of the Orange, that they've been under 500, period, let alone 2 games under 500, let alone losing to a pretty pathetic Pittsburgh team that Syracuse beat handily at the Carrier Dome just 2 weeks ago. And pathetic's the word, folks. It's a pretty pathetic effort out there for Syracuse shooting-wise, and in many different ways, as we'll go over. The comment section is going to be hot and heavy. Guys, do me a favor, okay? You are more than welcome to vent about this team and what happened, and that's what we're here to do. But please be civil to each other in the comment section, okay? A lot of our regulars are in there, and you guys, I know, will be great and regulate it, but I feel like we're going to have some more people in tonight than usual. So feel free to vent about the team, give your opinion. I'll highlight some of your comments coming up here, but let's be civil to each other in the comments section. It could get a little heated. People are pretty upset about this one. So what I want to say, and my instinct is that this is rock bottom, right? And it is quite literally rock bottom in a sense. As we noted, they've never been 2 games under 500 this deep into a season, and the way that this team lost this game, and really how losing to Duke is one thing. To be completely controlled by Pittsburgh in the second half of a game, a 7-12 Pittsburgh team that's coming off a 75-48 loss to Clemson the other day. Everybody has bad days, and Syracuse was missing Symir Torrance. Joe Girard got hurt late in the game, but no excuses here, folks. This was a pretty sad effort by the Orange tonight. Let me look at some numbers here, and then I'm going to respond to what you guys are saying in the comment section. And I see them coming in hot and heavy. Let me just pop in and see what's happening so far here. Brian says, don't tell me anything positive. After Duke and the Bills, this was exactly what I didn't need. Brian, I hear you, man. I'm still trying to go through the 7 stages of grief of the Bills losing that playoff game. And then we see this. Brian notes, different Brian, that Torrance's absence was obvious for this team. John already wants to see a replacement head coach. Go get Nate Oates. The Alabama head coach, former Buffalo head coach, right? And yeah, you guys are pretty passionate here. Blake, longtime fan from the early 80s. I've never seen back-to-back games where they look this bad. No defensive effort. Joe Girard had 6 turnovers, and the team lacks mental focus. So, yeah, I had a feeling that's what it was going to be like in the comments. So you guys do your thing. Let's highlight a couple things from this game, and maybe that's the wrong word. Let's just look at some of the things that happened in this game. Syracuse shot 9 of 32 in the second half, 1 of 14 from three-point range. This is a team that's got to score to win, and not just in the obvious sense of you got to score more points than the other team to win. This is a team that's all or nothing for Syracuse. If they're not scoring and they're not flowing offensively, and that's not exactly the greatest defensive team in the world they played out there tonight, greatest team in any sense that they played tonight. Syracuse shoots 19 of 63 overall. That's 30%. Pitt wasn't that much better. You lose to a team that shot 34% for the game, and Pitt was much better in the second half. That's how bad that is. Pitt in the second half of this game, 13 of 26, 6 of 12 from three-point range, and they shot 34% overall, people. That tells you how awful they were in the first half of this game, a game that Syracuse led 28-24 at halftime in what was one of the most dreadful halves of basketball I think I've ever watched. I was kind of hoping they would fumigate the arena after the first half to try and get some kind of good basketball in there for the second half. So the Orange go 6 of 31 from three-point range. That's 19%. And again, Pitt wasn't that much better. They were 7 of 26. 6 of those 7 coming in the second half. Pitt outscored Syracuse in the second half 40-25. Pitt is literally the worst offensive team in the ACC, and they're doing that to Syracuse, who I get is not the best defensive team. They're statistically the worst defensive team in the ACC, but, you know, come on. You got to be better than that, right? Pitt got 15 points off of 10 Syracuse turnovers. Pitt really dominated on the boards. The numbers are 45-39. That doesn't seem like much, but they got all the important rebounds. And John Hughley had 18 rebounds in this game. So Buddy Boeheim did lead Syracuse with 25 points. He was the only player in double figures for a team where your starting five averages in double figures, but he had to go 9 of 23 to get there, 4 of 15 from three-point range, chucking it all night. Jimmy Boeheim with 8 points, Cole Swider with 9 points. Swider was 3 of 14, 1 of 7 from three-point range. Joe Girard ended up scoring, but went most of the game scoreless. 1 of 9 overall, 1 of 6 from three-point range. Jesse Edwards, 8 points, 9 rebounds. I don't have any complaints about Jesse Edwards, folks. He's doing everything he possibly can. I think a lot of the discussion is going to center around, without Symir Torrance, keep in mind, but why Benny Williams didn't play more. And look, let's just be honest and call a spade, folks. No one's saying Benny Williams is some sort of savior that's sitting there on the bench that's going to drop in and score 18 points in this game. But when you are as bad as you were offensively and you need a spark and you're down a guy, Symir Torrance is somebody that can come in and generate offense, right, and move things around. He's not available tonight. You're out of excuses to not put Benny Williams out there. I don't care how he's been playing in practice, okay? There's just certain players that practice is not their thing. When the bright lights shine, that's when they play well. And Benny's made his fair share of mistakes this year. Again, nobody's saying that Benny's going to come in and save the day, but to not put him in until 5 minutes left when he clocked in, what is that? Like, you don't get the sense that Boeheim is trying everything he possibly can to get things rolling and spark, particularly, I just gave you the numbers, when no one else is scoring. No one else is doing anything. And the one guy that did score had to shoot 9 of 23 just to get to those 25 points tonight. And for a team that's so predicated on its offense, and that's who they are, and that's what their identity is, to shoot 19 of 63 in this game, 9 of 32 in the second half. I mean, I get sometimes the ball doesn't roll in the hole, but man, 2 games in a row. Duke's one thing. Duke plays that pressure defense. They got 5 NBA draft picks on the floor. You look just as bad against Pitt, a team that you went on a 26-5 run and controlled in the second half just a couple weeks ago at the Dome. And I understand it's 2 weeks later. It's not the same game. It's not the same situation, but pretty ugly out there, folks, to say the least. Burton did lead Pitt with 21 points, including 3 of 9 from the three-point range, but it's really not the numbers. It's the optics. It's how the team looked. It's how the team played. And look, you're seeing it in the comments here. I'll keep highlighting some of these, but man, fans are pretty upset with Jim Boeheim. I think a lot of this ire and a lot of the frustration is going to point at Boeheim. And look, heavy wears the crown. When Syracuse is doing well and they pull off these tournament, surprises and big wins, and the 2-3 zone flummoxes a team, and they end up being in the Sweet 16, people praise Boeheim for that, right? In a situation like this where they're 9-11 and have teetered on rock bottom, and the only reason I say they haven't hit rock bottom is they could dig the hole deeper, folks. There's still plenty of games to go here. There's a lot of bad teams left on the schedule, but what does that mean, right? Syracuse can no longer look at a team and say, okay, we should beat you just by showing up, because Pitt was one of those teams. You got Boston College 2 and 3 games coming up. You got a Wake Forest team coming up Saturday. Yeah, Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to be there. Hooray, right? Like, Syracuse just needs a good quality win to get back on track. And now they got to dig themselves out of a 2-game hole below 500. And we've never had that conversation around here. So you can say we're all freaking out because, the Syracuse fans have never been in this situation. And I hate to laugh, but it's not that. It's what you see. It's the effort. It's the lack of certain coaching moves. It's just, this team is what it is. It's not an athletic team. It's defensively flawed. And man, when they don't shoot well, they have no other way to win. And they did not shoot well tonight against the Pittsburgh team that really shouldn't be one that dominated Syracuse, and a bad offensive Pittsburgh team that's, we gave you the numbers, shooting as well as they did in the second half of this game. So, man, this is a bad loss. As bad as a loss as I've seen in the regular season under Jim Boeheim, as bad of a loss as I have seen really any time, given the time and circumstance and the type of team it is and the situation they're in, pardon me, kind of digs the hole a little deeper, right? Brian says this is much worse than the Duke game. I mean, yeah, you lose by 20 to Duke. Duke's Duke. This is Pitt. This is a bad Pitt team. By the way, in a Peterson Events Center that barely had 1,000 people in it, no atmosphere, no Oakland Zoo. That's not an excuse. Like, man, what is happening here? Brandon making it known. Boeheim's got to go. He only cares about his kids, and it is showing. Mark says, I don't even think they'll win 12 games now, currently at 9-11. Doug thinks that Benny needs to hit the portal. And listen, Benny's been on the record a number of times saying he's not going to hit the portal. He's going to ride it out. He trusts the process. He likes the coaching staff. He likes it here at Syracuse. And you can only take him on his word. Would anybody blame him at this point, given the slow but sure progress he's making and the lack of Jim Boeheim taking a chance on him? And look, practice is practice. I get it. You want to see something in practice to put a player in a situation. But tell me why John Bolajak, God bless the kid, okay, is a better option than Benny Williams. Because he's not. He's just not. John Bull's a nice complementary player. He can make some plays out there. He can take up some space in the zone, but he's not a better option to put out there than Benny Williams. You can't rationally say that, look me or anybody in the eye and say that's the right option at that point. And look, I think fans, and not that fans should control these things, coaches obviously have less patience for this, but I think fans are willing to let some of these players struggle a little bit. We'll be patient with that, knowing they're young players, but I mean, again, I'm not trying to make Benny out to be a savior. It's just the whole mentality of he's not ready, right? Well, you need all hands on deck in a game like that. Second half, much earlier, given the lack of scoring, given the lack of anything, any spark that was out there for this team. I want to say beyond Buddy Boeheim, but again, Buddy had to go over the top just to get to those numbers. He had 24 points in the first Pittsburgh matchup, but it was crisp, open, flowing, Buddy hitting his shots. I mean, Buddy took probably 5 or 6 really bad shots off the top of my head tonight. I don't blame him for doing it because nobody else was scoring. And man, Cole Swider, that's tough. That's 2 games in a row. He hasn't shot well for Syracuse. I know he had to take on a different role tonight at times, but he's chasing people on defense. Jimmy's way too far up in the zone here we are. 19, where are we? 20 games into the season, right? And they're still making these kind of mistakes. And I'm looking at the comments here. I'm just going to keep highlighting them. I understand why you guys are frustrated at this point. Mike says a broken record, 7-year slide under 500 in league play. This has been going on for years. And yeah, the best mark Syracuse has had in the ACC was in 2014, the year Tyler Ennis hit that half-court shot against Pittsburgh, and they haven't finished higher than 6th in the league since then. So there has been a build-up to this, but the trump card they've thrown down are the great tournament runs. Obviously, that's not happening this year. This team is not making the NCAA tournament. They are not capable of, not only by record and everything right now, but you think this team can win an ACC tournament as bad as the ACC is this year? This team has not strung together more than 2 wins in a row. What are we going to see over the next month and change that tells you realistically they can do that? So, I mean, the NIT at this point might be questionable for this team. That's what we're looking at here, folks. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. I'm not trying to make splashy headlines here. We're telling the truth. This is what we're watching. This is as bad of a Syracuse team as we have seen, quite literally in a sense, right? Matt says, agree with everyone. It's time to play Benny Moore and just let him develop for next year. Gerald says, someone please ask Jim what the heck is going on. Scott says it's worth commenting on. Mark thinks that Benny is gone into the transfer portal. Always a worry, right? Where players can go. I'm not even going to bring up players that have left in the portal that Syracuse kind of needs right now, but that's just kind of the life of college basketball these days. Brian says, what can Boeheim say? Great point. What can he say? I mean, I haven't had a chance to watch the post game. It's kind of going on corresponding with our show right now. I'll watch it afterwards, but there's nothing he can say, right? There is nothing he can say that you point at and say, oh, that's it. It's just, he can say all the same things. His team's missing shots, X, Y, and Z, but there's really nothing he can't say, right? I think that's a great point. And not that you want to, how can I put this? I mean, he's paid to figure these things out and say things that rationalize this stuff, but it's like Sean McDermott, the head coach of the Bills the other day, asked about the 13 seconds at the end of that game. He's like, I don't know what to tell you other than I'm going to feel it here for the rest of my life, right? Jeff thinks this is rock bottom and Boeheim's got to go. Just a lot of comments about Jim. A lot of criticism aimed at Boeheim. Ed's checking in from Blue Ridge, Georgia. Hope it's warmer down there. Ed, watching Syracuse basketball is worse than watching football at this point. Yeah, how often are you more optimistic about football in recent years than basketball? Football's picked up some great coaches. They got another player out of the portal today, cornerback from Rutgers who actually played with Deuce Chestnut. Quarterback out of the portal they got, Long Island kid, went to Michigan. Like, who knows? They've got to go out there. They're going to have a tough schedule next year, which the schedule comes out Monday for football. But do not look past lacrosse, folks. I'll just say that. I got 2 championship caliber lacrosse teams. I think the women's team more than the men's team. I think the men's team is exciting as they're going to be with Gary Gate as head coach and a lot of great offensive players. I think that it's going to take a year or 2 for them to be a true championship contender, but could they make the Final Four this year? Absolutely. Women's lacrosse, frankly, I'd be surprised if they don't win the national title. That's how good I think they are, even losing Emma Ward earlier this week. But we'll talk lacrosse another time. This is a basketball conversation, right? MC says ball handling is weak. Man, you guys are coming hot and heavy tonight. Appreciate you being here, and that's what we're here to do. We're here to vent, man. Post-game show. Make it happen. Ronnie notes this was supposed to be a stretch that provided a little breathing room above 500. Cole is a major disappointment. It's hard not to say that. It's hard not to agree with that. I appreciate that Cole wanted to come here, wanted a bigger role, wanted to stretch his legs as a three-point shooter. He's just not a good defender. He's struggling in the zone. He's struggling in a lot of aspects. Good rebounder. I still think there's a role for him, but I think we're starting to see there's a reason he was a bench player at Villanova. There's still time for him to develop. I'm not completely bailing on it, but if you wanted to label, is it a disappointment at this point? We certainly haven't gotten what was expected of him. We've seen flashes of it, right? But maybe not to the level that certainly this team needs at this point. Yeah, Brian brings it up here. How would this game gone if Kadari Richmond was playing point guard instead of Joe? I don't want to keep harping on that. Richmond's gone. There's nothing you can do about it, but that's exactly what this team needs. It's exactly what this team needs. A guard that can penetrate and can take up a lot of space. And Kadari was a great defender at the top of the zone. Right. So again, revisionist history, we can't do that, but it's frustrating to know that the process of driving a player away like that, it's a shame that Boeheim and Kadari couldn't get along. That's a two-way road. There's blame on Kadari there. There was some issues behind the scenes, practice. Jim saying earlier this year, maybe didn't practice as hard as he needed to. Whatever reason it broke down. I mean, is that because Jim has adapted? I don't want to just completely bash Boeheim here. Some of the criticism that he hasn't adapted to the game, and that's not true. He certainly has done that. But he can be stubborn, and he can be stuck in his ways, and he can be a little brash, and sometimes players don't take that well. You can't treat everybody the same. You know, some players take criticism better than others, and you always have the assistant coaches who play like the good cop to Boeheim's bad cop. But however and why ever it broke down, you don't want to see that become a pattern. That's where I'll bring the conversation into the current light here. I'm not just going to sit here and cry over spilled milk because Kadari's not here anymore. How many other players can you apply that to, especially when you've got to put together a team quickly, bring people in and out in the transfer portal, right? They've got a good recruiting class coming in next year, a fresh start with Chris Bunch and Justin Taylor and some of the players coming in next year, and maybe they'll embrace that opportunity. But it just seems like there can be a disconnect with the modern player there. And Benny's the exception to that rule. Benny actually understands the process. He's been patient. He's been on the record saying he's not going anywhere, but he's kind of a unicorn in that sense. You kind of have to appease these guys or else they're going to hit the portal, right? Joe disagrees in a sense. He says, Benny's just not ready. A 5-star project. You got to learn how to be SU terrible. That's a learned skill. Just going through more of your comments here, guys. Always appreciate you coming by and being a part of the post-game show. Adam says, I like the Giant lineup or one similar given the reality this team faces. Obviously, they have not run offense together. Maybe try working inside out more. My man Ed is pretty passionate here. I'm done getting tested for this nonsense. They have my money. So like a casino, the house always wins. Hey, at least you'll get to see Giannis on Saturday, right? Michael Antonio, I want the players from Baylor, Gonzaga. We can poach a few of those guys. Somebody get it done, right? And it's an interesting world you live in today. It's the mix of recruiting, the transfer portal, and to be fair to Boeheim, even though his bench play ranks literally last in the country year in and year out. You can't stockpile too many players, right? Because the further down the list you go, not everybody can be Florida State and just, put in like hockey lines and keep people going. You're going to have 4 or 5 guys at the end of the bench that aren't going to be happy and are just going to transfer out anyway, right? So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place there. But when you get into a situation like tonight, where a player like Symir is hurt, somebody that would have been a huge spark in the second half, could generate some offense, could change things up, right? Somebody who could truly run an offense. You miss a guy like that, and the house of cards falls down, right? But you can only have so many of those guys because everybody wants to play. And everybody that comes somewhere from the portal thinks they're coming in with a fresh start, a second chance, and they'll be the difference maker, right? So, man, I don't envy these coaches, but they get paid big bucks to figure this stuff out. And I like the transfer portal. I like the opportunities these college athletes are getting these days, and they deserve it. They deserve everything they're getting, NIL and transfer portal and all that. It can be frustrating, certainly, to see players come and go, but coaches do it all the time, and players should be allowed to do the same. And that's kind of where we're at right now, right? Mike says, we are the bad team. They are now. They are now. They've kind of, at this point, maybe they can dig themselves out of this hole. But when you show up and you look at it, Pitt, BC, some of these teams at the bottom of the ACC, Syracuse is now sliding down that hill. They're 3-6 in the league. They're 9-11 overall. You are the bad team now. And it's like that great television show. Are we in the bad place? I think we've arrived in the bad place. We thought we were in the good place for a while, but we're in the bad place, right? Let's see here. More good stuff from you guys. Parker notes that the man can still coach. He's a year removed from a Sweet 16, but the talent and effort just isn't there this year. I think the effort's there. They just don't have the athleticism. They don't have the talent. This team does play hard. They have the effort. They get discouraged, and you saw some slow-moving things and some turnovers and some things that result from frustration in a game like this. So they have the effort. They just don't have the talent. This team is just not athletic enough. It's not talented enough. There are talented players on this team. I mean, Jesse Edwards is the most improved player in the ACC. Look, Buddy could play for any team in the ACC. He's one of the top 5 scorers in the league. I don't have a lot of complaints with Buddy. Tonight, he had to go 9 of 23 just to get 25 points, but he's productive, right? He's going to give you those points when he gets open, and he's somebody you want out there. But, talent-wise, athleticism-wise, this team, it's like a perfect storm. It's a hodgepodge. My friend Scotty texted me this. It's just a hodgepodge of yuck right now. And that's about as good as you can describe it at this point, right? Joe makes a great point here, too. It's pretty eye-opening that Boeheim's worst team is the one with both of his kids on it. Yeah, and ironic is just the best thing I can come up with there. Because Jimmy's productive, too. Now, Jimmy didn't have a good game tonight, and Jimmy's very flawed defensively. I'm not going to, candy coat that, but 3 of 10 tonight, 8 points, 0 for 3 from 3-point range. He was 2 of 3 at the free throw line, but he continues to struggle at the free throw line, 7 rebounds. So Jimmy's giving you something out there. I mean, it's not like, a freshman trying to play varsity out there, but he has noticeable flaws. There's no question about that. Brian says with Symir, we'll win some and make shots, but 500 stretch coming up. John thinks Boeheim's killing the program at this point. No longer a draw. The zone is antiquated, and that's working against you too, right? Like the bench minutes. So you got to crack that starting lineup, or those, the first 2 guys off the bench, or you're not going to play. The zone takes time to learn. This is not a patient world we live in college basketball anymore. You really got to sell somebody on being in that zone. And the big sell has always been, hey, man, stick with it, learn the process, be in a unique zone. And when we get to the tournament, we're going to surprise some people. We're going to make a deep run. That's not the sell this year, right? So when you're selling the future about that, I don't know, coach, is the zone still as effective? You guys, you can just look at the track record, right? So that's going to be a harder thing to sell going forward for players to be in the zone defense. As effective as it was before, it's no longer the bewildering thing that knocks teams down. I mean, San Diego State couldn't handle it last year, and to an extent, I mean, West Virginia had certainly seen it in Bob Huggins. It can be a weapon, but it's no longer like the great Bermuda Triangle it used to be, right? Couple more comments from you guys here. Just scrolling through. Daniel thinks that not getting to 1,000 wins again. Yeah, he's already got 1,000 wins, right? We can all agree how ridiculous that was. Talks about his sons, and that's out the window. More importantly, he's heading for his first losing season ever with his two sons on the team. And a different John notes how bad that Colgate loss was. Colgate and Georgetown earlier set him back, and they've been trying to bounce back from that ever since, right? Ooh, I could barely keep up with you guys here. Lots of stuff happening in the comments here. I don't want to fall too far behind. Let's see. Sean with a long one here, but where'd Brent go? Hiding behind the comment. Horrible game, embarrassing, the Buddy show, but if he isn't scoring, who will be? Joe was terrible the first half and was done after he had 2 turnovers, missed a ton of shots. Love Boeheim and always will, but I think that his time is up. This is the worst year I've ever seen. Where's the recruiting? Cold shooting, no driving, defense stinks. Love Syracuse, but it stinks living in the ACC and losing. I guess I was spoiled so many years. I mean, you said it. This could potentially be the first losing season in 46 years as a head coach. That is a remarkable string. Mike Krzyzewski's had losing seasons. You name it. Name me a coach. They've had them. Jim Boeheim never has until potentially this year. The way they're heading down the road, maybe they can avoid it and fight scratch and claw to the end and get above 500, but that is certainly not the way it's trending at this point, right? Mike thinks the big reason the zone is less effective is the amount of great 3-point shooters there are now since moving the line. Mike, I think that's part of it. The other thing is just better shooters. The Steph Curry effect, if you will. Players are just more in tune to shoot threes. And God bless Quincy Guerrier, another transfer. I don't know why that kid was so bound and determined to shoot more threes, because he was such a great inside presence, one of the leading rebounders in the ACC last year. But it's the mentality of taking the three, right? And I think when you play Syracuse, I think one of the reasons teams shoot so well against the zone, obviously if you're not rotating and you're not there and you're not guarding, they're getting open shots. But when you practice for Syracuse, there's such an emphasis on it that they get in the mind frame of certain spots on the floor. They're in repetition. They're practicing it, even if it's only a couple of days. And they're so, no pun intended, zoned in on it that they tend to shoot better, I think, because of that too. Because they're so focused. Not that they don't shoot threes, but Pittsburgh's not a good 3-point shooting team. They're the worst 3-point shooting percentage in the league. They had 6 in the second half. So you go to the guy that can do it, but there were way too many possessions that Syracuse made it too easy on Pitt to hit those threes, right? I like to see a little, there you go. I like to see a little Josh Allen talk here. Josh Allen's a stud, but he doesn't get to play. Syracuse gets to play more games. Remember when your parents said that life wasn't always fair? Josh Allen should have had the ball in overtime of that game. I'll just say that. That's not why they lost, but let me just get that shot in there. Change your overtime rules, NFL. They're ridiculous. You know it, Lori. Free throws matter. Hashtag, right? T-shirt coming soon. Wink, wink. Mahir says, not about the zone. These players don't know where to be. Can't tell you how many bounce passes were right in front of Joe and Buddy tonight, and they literally did not get them. Right? Brian says almost all of those threes, wide open looks. Yeah, there was one three in particular. I think it was Burton who got it in the corner, and he got it, set, look. Then Cole recognized where it was and started running over to try and get him. And it's like, game over, right? Game over if you're taking that long to get over there. But not all his fault, by the way. Like sometimes he's out of position because somebody else is out of position and he's covering that guy, and it's just, the domino effect coming down here. So next up for Syracuse, guys, is Wake Forest on Saturday. Remember, of course, recently they played Wake. Game went to overtime. Syracuse lost that game on the road. Only had one field goal in overtime. Of course, the inbounds play that didn't catch late in that game. Buddy Boeheim was fouled, certainly, but they didn't get that break, and they lost. And that was in a stretch where you're playing Miami, one of the best teams in the ACC. Blew an 18-point lead, but gave them everything they could handle. Played Wake Forest. They're an upper echelon, and I know that's not saying much this year, but they're at least top half ACC team this year. And can you play that team close again? You got to think you're going to shoot better in that game than you have in these two prior games, but I guess I can't, and we can't take anything for granted with this team at this point. Giannis Antetokounmpo and his brother will be in the house, sitting in the Adam Weissman celebrity courtside seat. So if you're going to the Carrier Dome on Saturday, that'll be a sight. NBA champion, MVP, and one of the best athletes in the world will be at the Dome on Saturday. So we got that going for us, which is nice. And I couldn't find it on the internet, guys, but I know I've seen along the way somewhere. Giannis didn't go to college, obviously, but I believe he said that if he played college basketball, he would have went to Syracuse. I know I've seen that somewhere. I tried to Google it the other day. I couldn't find the clip, but I do remember seeing that along the way. Maybe I shouldn't mention that, right? Oh, what could have been 1 year of Giannis Antetokounmpo had he played college basketball, but he never ended up playing in college. So not quite the, maybe he does have some eligibility left, Michael. I don't know. Maybe we can petition Adam Silver for a little help at this point, right? All right. So that's what we'll wrap up for tonight. Saturday is another 8 o'clock tip time at the Dome. So we'll be here about the same time Saturday night. Remember, this show airs live on Syracuse Orange Sports on YouTube, on Syracuse Orange Basketball on Facebook, and once in a while we pop on Twitter as well. Follow me on Twitter at Brent Axe Media, and you can watch it there. If you do miss it, though, plenty of places to watch the replay. The YouTube clip, I embedded in my recap on syracuse.com. We'll fire it off on social media as well. If you're watching on Facebook, it automatically embeds there. So if you can't be with us live, and always appreciate you guys being here live, but if you can't, you can always catch the replay. So we'll talk to you again Saturday night. I would also like to remind you that Orange Weekly is a show we do Thursdays on all these same channels, about 1 o'clock, live as we are now, but you can catch that replay if you don't catch it live. And usually Mike Waters or any of our great writers at syracuse.com joins me, and we just kind of, catch up on the latest. We'll update football. We'll update lacrosse as well on that show. So that's Thursdays, 1 o'clock live, but catch the replay in case you can't see it live. Until next time, have a great rest of your night. Try to have a great rest of your week. And we'll meet again Saturday after the Orange take on Wake Forest. Thanks for hanging, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your night.